Good evening, everyone, and welcome. My name is Kyla Hannington, and I am the Public Outreach and Engagement Division Manager with the Prince George's County Office of Human Rights, the county's civil and human rights education and enforcement agency. Our office investigates complaints of civil rights discrimination. We combat human trafficking around the region. We ensure equitable access to county government services to all people in the language of their preference through our language access compliance program. And we provide opportunities for learning on issues of social justice important. With me as co-host tonight are my wonderful colleagues, Tiana Davis, the outreach specialist with the Office of Human Rights, and Dr. Audrey Lau with the Prince George's County Memorial Library System, who is also running tech for us. Welcome to both of you. We are honored, absolutely honored, to be joined this evening by a very special guest, author Edwidge Danticat. She is the author of several books, including Breath, Eyes, Memory, which was an Oprah Book Club selection, Crit Crack, which is a National Book Award finalist, The Farming of Bones, The Dew Breaker, Brother, I'm Dying, Create Dangerously, Claire of the Sea Light, The Art of Death, Everything Inside, a Reese's Book Club selection and National Book Critics Circle Award winner. She is also the editor of The Butterfly's Way, Voices from the Haitian Diaspora in the United States, Best American Essays 2011, Haiti Noir, and Haiti Noir 2. She has written 7 books for children and young adults, Anacoana, Behind the Mountains, 8 Days, The Last Mapu, Mama's Nightingale, Untwine, My Mummy Medicine, and a travel narrative, After the Dance. Her memoir, Brother, I'm Dying, was a 2007 finalist for the National Book Award and a 2008 winner of the National Book Critics Circle Award for autobiography. She is a 2009 MacArthur Fellow, a 2018 Ford Foundation Art of Change Fellow, the winner of the 2018 Newstown International Prize, the 2019 St. Louis Literary Award, the 2011 Bocas Nonfiction Prize, and the 2020 Bocas Fiction Prize, the 2020 Vilcek Prize for Literature, a 2020 United States Artist Fellow, a 2-time winner of the Story Prize, and the 2023 Penn Alamud Award for Excellence in the Short Story. Her essay collection, We're Alone, which we will be discussing with her tonight, was published just a few days ago, I think on September 9th of this, just a few weeks ago. She teaches at Columbia University. So welcome. It is a complete honor to have you here. Thank you so much for being with us.
And thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
We were hoping that you can get us started this evening by just sharing a little bit about the collection, especially for those people who haven't had a chance to read it yet.
Okay. First of all, I want to say thank you to you, Kyla, to Audrey, to Tiana, to the Office of Human Rights in the Prince George's County Library for having me. We've been talking about doing this for quite a long time, so I'm so happy that we're able to do it tonight for We're Alone. And I'm glad it showed up. It didn't show up reversed like sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
It actually showed up properly. So We're Alone is a collection of essays. I write, I work in many genres. I write for children, as you've heard, and I write for adult fiction and adult nonfiction. But I love writing essays. Essays for me are a place of putting my thoughts. And if sometimes when I have something urgent to say, like an opinion piece, like I had an opinion piece published in the Washington Post this past week, for example. So often there's an urgency to writing nonfiction for me. And I decided last year to put together some similar themed essays into this collection. So the first, I want to first say about the beautiful photo on the cover is by a photographer named Widline Cadet, who is a photographer that I wrote about. And I was going through her photographs, and you can see her photographs at Widline Cadet, WIDLINECADET.com. And I was going through them and to write about her work. And I came across this photograph and I said, I have to have this on, whenever these essays are published, I would love to have this photograph on them, because the photograph, really the covers don't often fully reflect a collection, but this one I feel does. There's a lot of water in this collection. There's a lot of weather, a lot of beauty and construction materials. So it just felt really perfect. So I'll just start. I want to read a little bit of sort of like, it's the, I think this bit, and maybe later when we're closing, I can read something else. But this piece explains the title "We're Alone," and I'm not saying, as you know, a lot of people are sort of confused by the title. It's like, well, "We're Alone" is not necessarily like that cheerful, right? Even though some of the essays talk about the pandemic, when we all felt somewhat alone, and I do think there's a loneliness that we sometimes feel, even some of us, especially people with the type of personality I have, that you can feel alone in a crowd, right? But this is a different kind of "we're alone." So this is a short reading, about under 5 minutes, but it explains the title in a way that gives you a sense of the book. um, your hands, give them to me. Let me speak in simply words you cannot forget. We're alone. I spent many years trying to find the original poem Plage from which these lines were translated. I came across the English translation in a 1934 book given to me in the 1990s by a friend. The book, The Poets of Haiti, 1782-1934, and the translator is an American writer named Edna Worthley Underwood. Underwood was born in Maine in 1873. I don't know how she ended up in Haiti during the latter end of the 1915-1934 US occupation, but she had friends in high places, including the Haitian president, who wrote of her book, "Readers will find in the poets of Haiti the echo of all great human emotions." Writing, for me, particularly writing essay, is a quest for a kind of alone togetherness, as well as something akin to what the Haitian American anthropologist and artist Gina Ulysse has labeled rassemblage, which she defines as assembly, compilation, and listing, regrouping of people, spirit, and ideas. So, dear reader, please allow me to reach for your hand. We're alone. So this is a shorter version of the preface, where this aloneness is where a writer writes alone and a reader reads alone, but we're alone together. And so the book is framed sort of like that's the beginning, and this is towards the end. And it's a brief definition of an essay class that my daughter was taking. And after reading this definition, it completely changed my idea of the essay. And it's the teacher was a writer named Erica Cardwell, and the class was called Writing the Self, which is the title of the closing chapter of the book. And she defines the essay this way: imagine the essay is a body of water, far flung, teeming into the distance, and you, the writer, are alone on shore. Will you enter the water? And if so, how will you swim? Or will you stand on shore as the water splashes against your ankles?
Mhm.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. You've actually started with those readings with some areas in which I had comments or thoughts, and this idea of the aloneness together, and how writing is connective, and that you can be alone in your house, and as we talk, and even have such strong feelings, and a strong sense of connection from the page. And you know, there's this idea of like, I see you, that I can have when I'm reading. And so, you and I have very different life experiences. We're in the same age range, but we're from very different places. And I can read in this collection, for instance, points where I'm like, oh, I feel less alone. And so I wanted to talk about that feeling. And so as you were building the collection, how did you choose to frame, or I mean, I think we know how you framed it, but how did you choose the pieces to put in?
Well, I mean, I think, sometimes people assume that one's essay collection is like every essay you've written between a certain period. I try even, I have story collections too. When you're putting that together, you do have that dilemma where you sit down with the whole volume of what you have. And then, so some of the, those essays were written across different periods of time. But then there were some that as I read them, I thought, this is just doesn't ring true so much anymore. I'm thinking differently, or some of this is dated. And so there's that initial, curation where some things just fall off. And naturally, you realize because, you're the same person with the same concerns, that there's some repetition that happens, right? Like you might have said the same thing or a similar thing in an essay, so you just take that out too. So gradually, for example, there's an essay called Traveling with Lorraine Hansberry, James Baldwin, and Audre Lorde, and those were separate pieces. And I thought, oh, I would love to see how that goes together. And I didn't do this, but for those of us who are old enough to the typewriter era, where you where you would cut your essay, like you would cut your work and put it on the floor and see like, oh, maybe this would go that. So I did a mental version of that, I think, with putting the essays together. But I wanted them to flow into one, like each essay to kind of flow into one another. And I think of, there's a new form, a newish form of essay that folks are calling the braided essay, where yes, exactly. So I think these are definitely braided essays. It's kind of, and people always quoting this back to me. There's a in the epilogue of Crick Crack, when you write, it's like braiding your hair. So I thought, here I'm coming back full circle with braiding hair in the braided essay.
Yeah. Oh, that's okay. I love that. And yes, as I was reading this, I was like, I definitely see braided essays, and I try to write an emphasis on try, braided essays, and they're very clunky. And so it's so wonderful to read these. So for people who aren't familiar with the braided essay, it is like you're bringing strands together, and you maybe not obviously seeing how they fit, or maybe it seems like we're telling a story here and now we're telling a different story, but it does become this one beautiful piece. Mm-hmm. And so it's just wonderful to watch that unfold. These are, great work. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
When just sticking with this, we're alone. I was really struck, I think, by the fact that I think you had said that your first U.S. hurricane was Katrina. And I definitely had the feeling during that. And when I was in Mississippi and we were waiting for help that was not coming immediately, that so many people felt that way. And the fact that you were able to, with your own experiences of hurricanes and what that's like, which is really hard to describe to people when the last lights go out and the storm is upon you. And I always had that feeling that there was no one coming for us. But I also just recently read What Storm, What Thunder, which is the One Maryland, One Book.
Yes.
For this year. And so I just can't help but think that the way I interpreted the "we're alone" there was not it's a devastating thing, but it also is such a creative event in so many ways, that what has come out of those two. And I was just wondering if you could kind of speak to that. Your way of talking about this is not the way that I normally, you hear about Katrina being bad, but like, I'm just curious as like, in terms of your own writing, how that is a creative part too.
Yeah, thank you. it's interesting because that essay, the A Rainbow in the Sky, that starts with hurricanes. I realized when I started experiencing, I moved to Miami in 2002, and that summer of all the hurricanes like Katrina and a few others was, I think, 2005, and I found that it was very hard to describe to people what it was like to go through such an event, and even if they hadn't been through it, because what I most, for when Katrina happened, I had a very new baby, and we were in this house. I didn't know, like, when I was my memory of being a child with hurricanes was that, oh, you get out of school, it's kind of like a festive event, you're kind of bunkled down, it's like not fun. You're not as afraid as probably you should have been. But when you're an adult, with a baby, and I remember just that, because we had these windows where you could see some out, just like to see these massive trees just like swaying like sticks, and then that creepy thing of the eye where it's just completely still, but there's a whole other storm on the other side of that, of the stillness. And so when I started describing that, and then of course what Katrina represented in terms of not just weather, but just exactly this idea that people are realizing that they're on their own. And in another book, in Create Dangerously, I have an essay called Another Country. What was and what people were saying, like, so people in Louisiana and and the South were saying we were left to our own devices, but the news was saying, like, in critiquing that abandonment, they were saying like, oh, this is not Haiti. Like, why are they acting like it's, there was like, so they were just like taking slides at Haiti for an event that had just proven, like, maybe in some parts of your country it is like you treat people like you think they're treated in Haiti, like, and they feel abandoned as well. And so that was what's getting hammered to us in the news. So we had gone through this hurricane, but then we're hearing like, oh, like they're treating people like it's Haiti. And so that idea of just like, you're not learning what you should have learned here, that people just felt abandoned. And so I wanted also to, like, again, with the braiding, going from that hurricane to a rainbow, right? Because we'd experienced living in Florida hurricanes close up, but you also, being Haitian or Haitian American living in the diaspora, you experience them from a distance when your family members, write you about it with the flooding. And so I wanted to talk about both aspects of that, of experience these types of storms, which will become more and more common, right, in this time of extreme weather. Because actually the last one I went through, it was that summer of like Maria and all these other ones where they were saying, they kept announcing, they were like, it's a category 6, like they, so more and more people will be going through these experiences, and we'll have to, like, if you're outside of a community, some people will be experiencing them alone.
Mm-hmm. Well, I just was pausing because I wanted to make space, but I'm gonna jump in. So as you're talking about Haiti and the way with the hurricanes, the way people were talking, I have a couple of things that I wanted to talk about the way Haiti is represented or discussed or not discussed in the United States. But I was very fortunate a few years ago. It was like, I believe it was 2017. I was a guest at the Haitian embassy in Washington, D.C. with then Ambassador Paul Altidore.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a lot of that experience that impacted me. But one particular thing that he said really stuck with me. So he said, so again, this is 2017. He said that Americans so often see Haiti as a place of pity, and it's a place that they send their money to in times of trouble. But he talked about the vibrancy and the art and culture and the fulsomeness of Haiti. And he encouraged attendees at this event, to go and see Haiti differently, to go and to travel and spend tourist dollars and to spend money on local businesses and to embrace and get to know Haiti in all its richness. And so, subsequently, and your book discusses this too, that there's, Haiti has had since 2017 additional difficult times. And I would like to know your experience throughout the years, so not just in the last, 6 or 7 years, but like throughout your life and your life in the United States. Like in the stories that you bring forward and your lived experience, like how do we continue the work of shifting the narrative about Haiti in the U.S. and seeing it and interacting with it in a more full way?
I mean, I think one way is these conversations that we're having, this conversation that we're having tonight, and the conversations that will certainly arise from the one book, One Maryland, right, with Miriam's book, and then the I saw some of the programming, the exposure, because a book, can be a door, right? The openness, that the conversations that it will open up to Haitian music, Haitian art, Haitian literature, certainly, and not just the Haitian literature from the diaspora, but we also have this rich literature. And Miriam is a scholar of literature, so that will certainly arise from those conversations. So I think that's one way to counter. I mean, certainly we've had vilification of Haitians since the Haitian Revolution, right? And then there was the US occupation and all that it wrought with these Marines who were there, who wrote these memoirs that then became these films about zombies and such. And then over the years, the representation of Haiti has this past week certainly has gotten much worse with, you have very powerful people. You have a presidential and vice presidential candidate, pulling tropes about Haitians that is going to certainly, that are definitely anti-Black tropes, anti-immigrant tropes, but that really make people targets in real ways. For example, the managing editor of the Haitian Times, which was covering Springfield a long time before these events, got swatted, like her home.
Oh.
Someone called the police as though, reporting a murder in her home, and she was swatted, and they've been getting threats, and there's been bomb threats. So there are real consequences to xenophobia, and we're seeing this in real time with Haitians as, proxies for it. So, and then there was the 80s with the AIDS crisis. So it seems, it's a circular thing that I think having these conversations with Haitians, just going to see for yourself, talking to people, and sharing the culture with the community, with the larger community, is very important. And I think, will be an important, it couldn't, like the one Maryland one book could not have come at a better time, because it will allow you to have these conversations, also to offer alternatives to these tropes and these terrible accusations that we're seeing in the news now every single day.
Mm-hmm. Right. Thank you.
I wanted to ask, since you mentioned the HIV/AIDS epidemic in the 80s, and so I grew up sort of just after the peak of all of the awareness around it. And reading your book was the first time that I heard of Haitians being one of the high risk communities. Um, Growing up, I remember, the documentaries and the movies and the campaigns for, gay couples and the drug users. Like they were even saying, give clean needles to drug users. Was there any sort of advocacy going on for the Haitian community surrounding the epidemic?
Yeah, absolutely. So it started, it was, I think I always tell my children that the COVID is my second pandemic in the US. AIDS was the first, and it started at something called GRID, and they used to collect, it's like gay, like a gay man's disease. That's how they identified it. And then gradually the FDC, they added drug heroin addicts. They like it was the 4 H's they called it: homosexuals, heroin addicts. I forget the hemophiliacs,
Yep.
hemophiliacs, and Haitians, and we were the only ones that were added by nationality, and that was based on a few cases that of Haitian or Haitians who had HIV. But they later found out that the Haitians who had HIV acquired it the same way the other groups did, either through blood transfusion or other ways. But by that time, the damage had been done. So there was a lot of advocacy. There was actually famously a very large march on the Brooklyn Bridge in April 1990. And my parents were very apolitical because they had lived through a dictatorship and didn't really go to demonstrations. They went to that demonstrations, and they went through demonstrations when the police assaulted Abner Louima, who was someone who our family knew. So that was a march where to this day people say we shook the Brooklyn Bridge. So there was a lot of advocacy. There was a lot of pushback, but it lasted for a very long time. For a very long time, I would say like into the 2000s, Haitians couldn't donate blood, not even to family members. So it did last quite a very long time. And the reason you probably did not hear about it is that, it was as a community, we were hyper aware of it, but we were the only people by nationality. Like that was really outrageous and singular.
I'm going to put down another question.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead. You're exploding.
I have many things that I want to talk about because it's really is wonderful work. And we're the Office of Human Rights. So one of our beliefs here, and it's kind of a guiding principle for our work and really for Tiana and I and the Outreach Division, this is our vision, is that we can end discrimination before it begins. Like, I really believe that, person by person, boots on the ground, by building understanding across diverse peoples and by helping people see others and they experience both the common humanity, like the shared experience, the common human experiences, but also the unique stories and journeys that each person has. And so you're in your essay, and please, if I don't have the pronunciation correct, please correct me. Wazo, not Mawazo, is that right?
Wazo, not Mawozo.
Okay, right. And so in that essay, you write of the late Haitian attorney, criminologist, and academic Patrice Michel Darencourt. You want to say that? You can correct me.
Darencourt.
Darencourt. I was not even close. I'm so sorry. I'm from Canada. Like I am so embarrassed as a Canadian to not do a better job here, and so I'm sorry to my country people for this. But you quote him as saying, "Understanding others," and you write, "Understanding others, including our most maligned neighbors," and then here you quote him, "allows us to evolve and to be more human." And so this phrase, "understanding others allows us to evolve and to be more human," is kind of the sentiment at the center of our work here at the Office of Human Rights. So this part where you're quoting him is from a conversation, right, about books, and I'm wondering, for our viewers, if you could take some time and think, like, what would you recommend to them? And it could be books or shows. What is something that's really impacted you? What books would you choose to highlight?
Yeah, so to frame it for the readers, Professor Darencourt was someone who was kidnapped in Haiti and killed by an armed group, and they were so. I remember when that happened because he was kidnapped at the same time as these 17 missionaries that everybody heard about in the news. And then I started just looking into his life, and there were so many videos of him online, including one talking about books. And he was asked on a show called Délivrez-vous, and the show is the Délivrez-vous is a little pun on deliver yourself, but it's the books in you. And he was asked to identify 5 books that he would bring on a desert island, but he said 5 books that speak to our current moment. I guess I think you're reading one. What Storm, What Thunder is a wonderful book. I've edited. I don't know if it's right to plug my own books that I've edited,
Absolutely.
but I plug those because they have many different authors in them. So a couple of years ago, I edited two collections published by Akashic Books called Haiti Noir and Haiti Noir 2. And those are interesting, I think, places to start with Haitian literature, because it's a mix and translation of writers who still live in Haiti, writers like Yannick Lyons, Evelyn Touillot, and some who live in Canada, some who live in the U.S. We have Roxane Gay is one of the authors. Mayam Chancis also has a piece. So it's a good sort of introduction to contemporary Haitian literature in those two books. Those stories, but all the stories, they have Maryland Noir. They have noir of every. It's a wonderful series. So they have a certain bent, but they will introduce you to Haitian literature. And there's a book called The Haiti Reader, which it's a really big volume. And look at you. Yes. You are ready. That actually is really a great starter to Haitian, just everything, history, literature, art. The Haiti Reader is a really great place to start. And then, and I think there are pieces there, but I would also recommend Silencing the Past by Michel Wolf Touillot, who's a wonderful scholar, but writes history in a very personal way. And then Gina Athena Ulysse, who is referenced in the preface, she has a collection called Why Haiti Needs New Narratives.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a lot of homework, folks, but but I'm sure you can find these books at the library.
This is great. I have to say, I got this. So I actually borrowed this from my husband's son, because I was reading this book, and I was like, I don't know. I mean, my ignorance is vast, and the more I read of your book, the more vast my ignorance grew, because I was getting the touch of all the things I didn't know. And so I was looking, I think you mentioned in here the book, Why the Cocks Fight?
Why the Cocks Fight, yes.
Right. And
it's about Haiti and the Dominican Republic, Michelle Worker. Yeah.
And so I was like, I wrote to my husband's son, I said, do you have this book? Because he's a voracious reader. And he was like, no, but I have this book.
Oh, yeah.
So it is this that really, there's a reason that I'm in the middle of reading this, and it's because of what this book brought to me. So thank you for that. And those are great recommendations. God. Thank you.
Oh, that's great. That's always what I hope to happen. Exactly that situation where someone is reading my book and they're like, oh my gosh, I want to read this other. I want to know more. So that's I always hope I'm like the starting point.
You absolutely were, because I managed to make it through the first two chapters, and I'm sitting there scribbling, and my husband's like, aren't you supposed to be reading that book? Aren't you interviewing this person? And I said, well, I just want to grab all these books together. And it was just such a great I love books that give you books, and you've done such a good job of doing that. And I just want to follow up with the book question is, for those of us like me who have read a book by you, where do I go next?
Well, it depends which one. Oh, this one. Okay.
Uh-huh.
So it depends. Do you like fiction or nonfiction?
Will do both.
Okay. I mean, it depends. If you're one of those people who want to start with like someone's first book, I would say Breath, Eyes, Memory, which is my first baby. And if you like stories, my most recent story collection is Everything Inside. My memoir, though, like Brother, I'm Dying, which is the book that I think if the gods of literature said you get one, I would have picked that one, because it's my family story. It's about my dad, and so like the movement to a new generation in my family. So I would say if you either Breath, Eyes, Memory, or if you like long like novels, Everything Inside. If you like fiction, like short fiction, and Brother, I'm Dying. But if you for soft landing from the essays, that go to Brother, I'm Dying.
No, I really just the mention of that book really just blew my mind, and I feel like maybe one of the things I think that like reading books like this helps is building empathy and really kind of getting to the heart of what it means to be from some other place to come to a new place, and trying to help people understand that that is not a dangerous thing.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I hear that so often in so many migrant works, that it's just the struggle to find home, really,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and safety. And so I'm really looking forward to that one. I really I know somewhere in this book you said that you don't write happy things, but
Yeah.
sometimes I think you have to. I like stories of resilience, and I find beauty in that people can still come out of those types of experiences, and just be strong. And to me, that's beautiful. It's to go through that kind of experience, and to still be able to appreciate people and life, and not be, you know, it's a beautiful thing. So
Thank you. Thank you. I mean, I think that's the power of art, right? And particularly literature, because again, you can be, you know, in the most positive sense of we're alone, you can be alone with somebody. I mean, sometimes I'm reading a book where I feel like I know those characters better than I know some people in my life. And that I want to spend more time with those people than I do with people in my life. So it's really a powerful thing. And like I waver sometimes, you know, over like, can literature change the world? Like that's a big ask, right? Especially these days. But I think it can really move some people. It can move some people to action. It can move some people to empathy.
Yeah. I'm going to read something you wrote in one of the earlier chapters. It
Mhm.
said, "My best writing teachers were the storytellers of my childhood." And we've been interviewing people from different cultures. We interviewed a Chinese gentleman, we interviewed a Native American person recently, and that line of thought seems to come up no matter what the culture is, right? Learning these stories so that you can keep them alive. Um, and so I wanted to ask, it seems like you started learning from the kitchen poets at a pretty young age. Did learning these stories at a young age impact you at all? And like, when did you decide that it was for you to be the one to keep these stories alive?
Mm. Thank you. I mean, absolutely. I remember hearing, you know, my aunts and you know my grandmothers who were not readers. They did not read, but they could tell a story like in such a lively and vibrant way. And I was a very shy kid. I would watch that with awe. I was amazed by it. I mean, because they had this, it was so real that so they would be telling a story. And this also happened in the summer when we went to the, you know, to the countryside for the summer with other family members. And they would start telling the story. And if you seemed like you were nodding off, there would be a song. You know, there was just like the call and response, that connection. They even started with call and response, which I named my short story collection after: creak, crack, tim tim brashesh. And even, you know, the way you were greeted, sometimes you would say honneur, which is honor, and then the person being greeted would say respect. So there was always that conversation, you know, as part of the storytelling. And I loved it, I adored it, and I learned. And when I look back now, I think, you know, I learned pacing from that. I learned connecting. but I was a really shy kid. So I never took my turn at telling the story. I was never going to be that person. But I remember when I was, given a book and I thought, oh, this is what is happening, but in a book. And I can pick up that story whenever I want. And I'm always with that person. So then I became that kid in the corner reading. I was still consuming those stories. But that, the oral storytellers in my life really taught me the power of stories.
Mhm.
And there were so many stories I was told when I was a kid. And I talk about that a little bit in Brother, I'm Dying, that I didn't know why I was told that story. But for example, when things would happen in my life, like when my father died, I remember being told when I was a kid a story about a girl whose father died and she couldn't accept it. And then this older woman went into the land of the ancestors to tell her father that, and her father sent her a message. And I was like, oh man, that's why I was told that story, because somewhere in that thread of life, they knew that one day my father would die and I would need the story. And there were so many other oral stories that I was told like that at some point in my life, I realized why I was told them as a kind of preparation for my future life. So yeah, the power, that for me was the power. But I realized that I wanted to do that when I read on the page, when I was alone with a book, when I didn't know how words got on the paper. I didn't know how one did that, but I used to think immediately when I started reading books, I was like, I want to do that. I want to do the thing that they're doing with their voices on this paper. and I want someone to be able to carry it around like I am.
Wow. Actually, let me just take a moment for people who are watching and just say do have time for viewer questions. So please type any into the chat, wherever you're watching. Audrey's going to be able to see them. And what we can do is we can highlight them on the screen and then share them. Audrey, do we have any at this point?
I think I have one. Let me grab it. There we go.
Can you read it?
It says, do you think a categorical weather hurricane is akin to our own personal hurricanes?
Ooh, that's a very philosophical question. I think we could make a metaphorical case for it, because it depends on sometimes what we're going through when we're going through difficult times. It feels like weather, a hurricane definitely has that level of turbulence to it. In the essay on the hurricanes, I do actually a parallel comparison to the question to a rainbow, because that's how, in a way, I drag myself through this essay out of the category, the actual hurricane, into this more like symbolic space that rainbows represent. And I would see rainbows like at very important moments where they were considered signs. And it goes back even to the sometimes people forget, like the Fire Next Time. The title of James Baldwin's book is where he talks about it was a flood. I'm paraphrasing badly, but before it was a flood, which goes back to the biblical flood, right? Noah's flood. And then next time, and then God had said, I will never end you with flood anymore. I don't know if he's still keeping that, she, they are keeping that promise, but it's like, it's a fire next time, right? And so this idea that these earthly manifest, from fire to water to weather, can definitely have parallels in our lives. But in that essay, I wanted to gravitate towards weather, but with rainbow and what that means and what that symbolizes, and actually and what it means actually in mythology, and different types of mythology, and what it means to different people, but still going back to like internally what it means, right? Like when you actually see this, whether it's frightful like a hurricane or beautiful like a rainbow, when you see this manifestation of this thing that's just so tremendously bigger than yourself that it's just so hard to explain, I think it becomes very powerful and can have parallels to things in our lives for sure.
It's great. Thank you very much. Is there any more, Audrey?
Not that I'm
Okay.
seeing. So,
well, I'm going to ask one more, then I'm going to hand it back to Courtney. I know I've had more than my share of questions, but I did want to. We talked a little bit about this backstage, but my youngest daughter is currently a senior in university, and she's currently not currently. A couple of years ago, she read this book. So it's Creek Crack,
yeah,
Creek Crack, which is your second book. It's a collection of short stories, and it came out in 1996.
Mm-hmm.
And so my daughter was assigned it in 2022 and loves it. And I was showing Edwidge before we went live, like her many notes, which I don't think I'm going to be able to on camera, but she wrote all through it and loved it so much. And I wanted to know, like, what is it like? Can you talk about what it is like to have a book that you wrote, came out almost 30 years ago? It is being assigned, it is being studied, it is being loved, today. How is that as a writer and as a human walking through the world?
I mean, the 30 years part is the hardest part to grasp.
Yeah.
Because I don't look like that young woman on the cover, but I still feel like her. And it's just, and there are moments when other people are reading it, and of course, across the generations, they have new insight into the stories. And it's just magical sometimes to feel like, oh my gosh, there are moments I'm like, I wrote that and I was a young woman. So I was like, where did that come from? Because I have a daughter, at the age now that I was when I wrote some of the stories in Creek Crack. So it's amazing. And it's beautiful to have lasted this long, actually, to have people still reading them. And I can, there are times when I can't read through the whole thing. That would be rather painful. But sometimes I open and I find a section and I can go back and think when I wrote it. But to have that conversation, especially with younger people who are just coming to it. And the most beautiful thing I've been told, among the most beautiful thing I've been told about the book is that sometimes, younger Haitian Americans who would say, it helped me understand my parents. It helped me understand their journey. It helped me have a conversation with them about their lives, because the dictatorship made a lot of parents, like my parents, they never wanted to talk about their past, what they had gone through. So that to me was just wonderful that a new generation is reading it. Something that one wrote 30 years ago. That's just I could not have, the girl I was who was writing those stories could never, ever have imagined that. So it's a beautiful thing.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Tiana or Audrey?
I'm going to jump in real quick because I just want to follow up on that. You have students that you teach. Is there a book or two that you kind of assign on purpose, whether to provoke or to inspire or to I know my advisor, who is no longer with us, made us read this whole book only to tell us that there's this little line and this is where he's wrong, and you don't need to read the whole book, but thanks for playing. So I was just curious if there were books out there that you the things that you like to give to your students.
Not for those particular reasons, but to prove, but I teach a class called Writing in the Presence of Ancestors, which is the premise of it. It grows from this essay called Rootedness by Toni Morrison. And so in that class, we match writers like ancestors with contemporary writers who are writing about them. So I'll teach The Color Purple with Salamisha Tillett's In Search of the Color Purple. And I'll teach Lauren Hansberry with Imani Perry's Looking for Lorraine, and James Baldwin with Eddie Glaude's Begin Again, which is about his quest for, so like that pairing. So it's one of those classes I love very much to teach, because I often feel, in the essay, Morrison talks about, she wonders sort of out loud in the essay what it's like for a Black writer to write in the presence of an ancestor. And since you mentioned kitchen poets earlier, I used to teach Paule Marshall, and Paule Marshall writes about a trip she took to Europe with Langston Hughes, and in her memoir called Triangular Road. And so I always feel like I walk in the presence of ancestors, of the Haitian writers who came before me, of Black women writers, who are still with me, like who I know, like Sonia Sanchez and Nikki Giovanni and Ms. Morrison and Paule Marshall and Audre Lorde, who I write about in We're Alone. So that, for me, I always just try to get my students to make these connections, because of course, none of us just, spring out of thin air. There's a lineage, there's ancestry, especially, in literature, that there's a trail that has been blazed before us. And especially if you're a child of migration, like sometimes you lose that connection because the language that the literature was written is cut off. I'm lucky that I'm able to read Haitian writing, but also that there's been wonderful work of translation, which is what was something that I tried to bring in sort of snippets in Haiti Noir and Haiti Noir 2. So yeah, a lot of those, the writers I talk about in the book, like Marquez, I try to find some way to sneak into the presence of our students. But I was looking at my desk. So I'm teaching now a class on writing with photographs. And this was last week's reading, Tina Camp's Listening to Images. And so look at my.
My daughter will be proud, yeah.
Yeah, so that's a really, actually, it's a book about just, listening to images, but also the historical use of Black bodies and photography, and that's very provocative in class. We had a really good discussion about that.
It looks like 4 or 5 audience questions popped up, Audrey, after
I know.
the last one.
And we have 5 seconds. Sorry.
Yeah.
5 minutes or so left.
Well, let's see. Let's do this one. Of all your writings, books, do you have a favorite or special one?
Brother, I'm Dying. I think because it's a family story, it talks up. I feel like it's the one book I want to give to my nieces and nephews. That one, and it's a memoir. It talks about my dad, my uncle who raised me, and my daughter.
Do you want to ask a question, Tiana, before we go?
Oh no, I thought we were going to go through the others. But
we can.
Okay. No, but go ahead, Tiana, please.
Okay, so you mentioned Audre Lorde a lot, Toni Morrison, Alice Walker. They come up a lot in this book, and I know that a lot of them were featured in the book that your 11th grade history teacher gave you. Is that how you found those authors?
Yes, absolutely. So Mary Evans, Black women writers from to 1950, I think was the cutoff. Yeah. But yeah, that's how I found a lot of those writers. And I started reading. So the book was, it was an introduction, sometimes an interview by them, and Rootedness was in that book. And I started reading them, and it was, and then afterwards there were wonderful connections like Daughters of Africa, that just, and when I saw Daughters of Africa, I was like, that's it, like that, this is going to change some other young woman's life, because you see the whole scope, like through the whole diaspora. Paule Marshall was in that. So that was really my introduction. Yeah, there you go. You have the new Daughters of Africa. Yes. Daughters of Africa. And I'm in that one. Yay. So that sort of shows you the circularity of things, and it's a beautiful circularity. Yeah, but I was introduced to a lot of the writers I call the literary loves of my life in that book.
All right, I have a question that came out on a very one of our colleagues who can't access the chat, but her question was, how would you describe Haitian joy?
Oh my gosh, I would describe it through Haitian music, Haitian dance, Haitian art, a great Haitian meal, some duit à pois, duit collé, duit jonjon, a walk in the countryside, a day at the beach, just the beautiful Haitian sky, some Creole poems. So, but going back to the music, just Haitian music is very joyful, especially during Carnival, and it also has like all these nuances that like sometimes there's like messages that manage to be, but start with Haitian music for Haitian joy. And also there's music that also has, of course, pain in it, but Haitian joy, Carnival music. I wrote a book on Carnival called After the Dance, where I try to capture some of that, but Haitian music.
And then I'm going to follow up with, how do you stay emotionally strong when writing about such profound and heavy topics?
Well, the work for me, the work itself, it really holds me up. I don't want to say like it's therapy, but it gives me an outlet that allows me to just stand taller in the rest of my life, to just kind of have a place to put my joys and my pains. And so the work itself helps me sustain myself, like take care of myself.
Let's see, we got another one. What color of the rainbow do you find yourself gravitating to when you are writing?
It depends. I think lately it's been yellow, because I think it's part of it because I just read Tar Baby, the Toni Morrison novel, and there's the woman in the yellow dress. And this summer I was at a Toni Morrison symposium in Martinique, and so many of the women were wearing yellow that it's just like yellow on black skin, as she describes it. It's just so stunning. So I've been gravitating towards that. But also the red, which is very powerful, which, as my mother used to say, red is victory.
I think that we actually are at the point where we're out of time. And so, Audrey, are we good on questions there? And
for the most part, yeah. I think everyone's just had a really great time and has really appreciated you coming to speak with us, and just a lot of fans from the very beginning. So,
well, thank you, everyone. Thank you for coming at your dinner hour, on a Monday. Thank you. Thank you for joining us.
Well, it has been, I echo that. I do want to say, for all of you watching, whether it's right now or you're going to tune in later, you're watching this on demand later, the fact that you chose to spend time with us is wonderful. You are why we do what we do, and we thank you so much. And I will say, one of the best ways that you can support the people who come and talk to us, like Edwidge, is to buy their books. So please order We're Alone from your favorite independent bookstore if you haven't had a chance to read it yet. You can also take it out from our friends Prince George's County Memorial Library System, or your local library system if you are not watching locally to us. We have a bunch of other wonderful events coming up. We have our Lunch and Learn, which continues tomorrow. That's also with the library. We're having a guest who's speaking about dispossession by design. And then tomorrow night, we are interviewing Prisca Rodriguez on Tias and Primas, on knowing and loving the women who raise us. So we hope that you can join us tomorrow night. And we've got lots of great things. So go visit the library at pgcmls.info, or visit us, the Office of Human Rights, at civilrights.mypgc. I almost forgot .us, civilrights.mypgc.us. I do want to take a minute and thank Tiana and Audrey, and particularly Audrey. We have had some tech problems over here on the Office of Human Rights land, and Audrey has stayed late at the library to make sure we could do this program because of our tech problems. So thank you so much for that. And of course, to our guest, Edwidge. As we have been working on this for a number of months, and I just can't tell you how excited and delighted I have been that you are coming. So thank you so much for your time and your willingness to join us tonight.
All right, thank you. Thank you to Thank you to you again, Audrey and Tiana. Thank you. It's been a wonderful conversation. I've enjoyed it very much.
All right. Thank you all. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Bye, everybody.